Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to give my review and thoughts on Avatar: The Way of Water. Now this is the first of many sequels of the first Avatar movie that came out 13 years ago. So it seems like it's been a long time coming until we had to really get into the whole Avatar universe to really understand what has really gone on in this movie. Now for me, I'm no stranger into watching James Cameron's movies. I've been a huge fan of the two Terminator movies that he's done. But also, when I saw Avatar, it was definitely a movie that demonstrated how visually impressive it was. You know, getting into the world of Pandora, the visual effects really sort of blew us away for its time. So it seemed a little bit questionable to know how the second movie could really match that, knowing how visual effects have improved over the time and whether or not this movie really could have lived up to the expectations. So to really give my thoughts of watching the first Avatar movie, it was definitely a movie that really excelled on its visuals and its effects, as well as delivering great action and dialogue between characters. And I felt the movie had a plot, but was somewhat very lackluster. It was a plot that felt it would have suited more of a runtime between 1 to 2 hours. But the first Avatar movie ran around 2 hours and 40 minutes, so it definitely dragged on as long as it can. So it felt a little bit too much of a time where you just kind of just wait on things to happen when not really much has been delivered, instead of delivering on, you know, the good visuals, the scenery of Pandora. It definitely immersed yourself, but the plot itself was a safe plot overall. It wasn't a breathtaking plot, it was just a very safe, simple idea of humans versus the Na'vi. Not really much going there. Now, not really to getting into much spoilers, so the Avatar: The Way of Water is now set more than a decade after the events of the first movie. So now Jake Sully is now fully programmed into his avatar, and now he starts a family with Neytiri, so he has kids, and now they're trying to sort of live on a life of Pandora. But now the humans have decided to invade on Pandora and now kind of extinguish some parts of their resources. And now it's kind of the beginning of, again, from the first movie, where you have the humans trying to take the resource of Pandora against the Na'vi trying to protect it. So it kind of builds on that similar theme from the first film. Now, obviously, knowing in 2022 where we have very good visuals and CGI, does Avatar: The Way of Water stand out compared to the other movies? And my thought is yes. I thought the visuals were really impressive, very immersive. For some reason, I don't know how James Cameron really does it, but he definitely gets the visuals on point where you can really sort of see the sequences of the movie, especially where you watch the action, which is, in my view, the best part of the movie, to also some of the great visuals that we also see underwater, knowing the name of the title. But you do get quite a lot of water scenes in this movie, and you really do experience a lot of the plants, the creatures, the wildlife. It's really does immerse yourself. So really, the visuals definitely impressed me as I expected it to be. But overall, it was definitely a visual experience. Now, one thing I will say about this movie that I wasn't so much of a fan of is its runtime. And it is a 3 hour 10-minute movie, and you really do feel every minute of your fiber going through it. It's really hard to sort of put at least most of your attention into focusing on what happens, because there are certain times in this movie where you're kind of left with some action sequences where one action sequence starts and then you're left with like an hour and a half of nothingness, really, that nothing really sort of happens. You know, you're left with good visuals and some sort of interaction with the other characters in the movie, but it doesn't really sort of deliver on much of a plot that really happens. So all in all, you're kind of just waiting to sort of think what's going to happen next, and you're just left with no sort of information that's really happens or any sort of dialogue that really has any meaning on the plot. So somewhat that was the only thing that really sort of made it a little bit lackluster. But if the movie was any shorter, around at least 2 hours or 2.5 hours, I think it could have been better. This movie definitely didn't deserve the right for it to being a 3 hour, 10-minute movie. One thing I will say that this movie did confuse me as well is really the characters. So there's one character in particular, his name is Spider, and I never really got an idea of who he was. He was just somewhat of a side character. He was, on the human side or the Na'vi side. I never really got, and he had so much screenplay as well that you kind of felt, what does he even do? So that kind of confused me a lot. You never really get so much of the main characters, which are Jake and Neytiri in this movie, especially in the midsection, because a lot of the midsection of the movie where it's filmed underwater, you're just getting a lot of sequences where you're showing Jake and Neytiri's kids, as well as the kids from the other side of that Na'vi side where they master water. They have like a very different sort of makeup where they have like very thick arms and a very sort of larger tail that helps them swim underwater. But you basically get to see more of them in that movie, of them being underwater. They talk and interact with some of the sea creatures. But that's really it. The only thing I will say that this movie does excel is the ending, where the action sequence is impressive. And really the dialogue between characters, they definitely delivered that very well. They really get the emotions right, and the acting is very superb. So those are the things that I felt were a real key selling point of that movie. But yeah, overall, I actually did enjoy the movie. I thought the visuals were very on point. I loved a lot of the sequences of the water that really sort of seeing the interaction of the characters and the sea creatures, and the action sequence at the end was definitely superb and really well put together. The only things I will say I didn't like is the plot. I did think it was still a relatively weak plot compared to the first one, especially for a runtime of 3 hours and 10 minutes, which really was really long to kind of put together to really try and sort of retain my attention to know what happens. So I thought if they reduced that time to like a 2 hour 40 to a 2 hour 30-minute movie, I thought it would be more acceptable. And I thought overall it was a good movie. So to kind of sort of give an overall rating, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. I definitely would be more intrigued to see how James Cameron will definitely put more of the sequels together, and really how to explore the whole Avatar universe. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this movie. See you later.